Chapter 2192. How uncomfortable would it be to hear the sound of fingernails scraping against glass? Not many people would be able to answer this question. However, if someone was here and heard this shrill cry, they would definitely think that compared to this sound, the former sounded better than the most popular music. The sound of fingernails scraping against glass would at most make people feel uncomfortable. However, at this very moment, the shrill cry that resounded in the world of Crimson was enough to tear apart the nerves of an ordinary person, puncture their eardrums, crush their heart, and crush their brain in an instant. Even Noah, although he did not suffer any injuries, felt extremely uncomfortable. Of course, this kind of cry was purely used to disgust people. The countless shadows of death that were densely packed like locusts all over the world of Crimson let out screams that were either angry or happy. They held huge scythes that seemed to be condensed from blood in their hands and rushed towards Noah's direction. Walala! In an instant, the entire world of Crimson seemed to have turned into a boiling bottom of the sea, producing an intense reaction. The countless shadows of death turned into monstrous waves that surged toward Noah, who had suddenly entered this world, like a surging tide that couldn't be seen with one's naked eye. This scene was simply like pouring red dye into a pure swimming pool, causing the entire pool to be dyed red at an astonishing speed. Countless shadows of death that were darker than the Crimson world rushed towards Noah's direction, directly engulfing the figure of Noah, who had an uncomfortable expression on his face. Unfortunately, this scene only lasted for a moment. With my spirit of words technique, let the world show justice. This incantation is eloquent and powerful, killing the enemy without fail at the very center of the densely packed shadows of death, a bright crimson light that dispelled all the ominous crimson color in the surroundings lit up, illuminating the entire world. In the next moment, the center of the light suddenly shook, and countless sharp swords shot out. They were pure white swords that were engraved with mysterious and profound characters. As long as you know your opponent's background, you'll be able to kill all your enemies with the sword of words. Warrior. After transforming into a world-level authority, this clone could even have effects on worlds. Like a flash of light, the sharp swords slashed across the shadow of death. Poochie, 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 poochie. Amidst a series of ripping sounds, the shadows of the Grim Reapers were instantly sliced into two by the swords of spirit speech that shot out explosively. Countless swords of words rampaged through the Crimson world, flying back and forth, slaying the shadows of the Grim Reaper one after another. In an instant, more than half of the densely packed shadows of the Grim Reaper were slaughtered. As a result, the entire Crimson world instantly turned into a world of swords and death. It was as if there were two factions at war, with conflicts occurring in every corner. On one side, there were countless shadows of death. On one side, there were countless swords that covered the sky and covered the earth. The existence of the two factions were like warriors, opposing each other with equal harshness, fighting in every corner of the Crimson world. Poochie. Sometimes, the swords of spirit speech killed the shadow of death, piercing through the shadow of death's body like a laser, causing the shadow of death to disappear with a sharp cry. Clang! Sometimes the shadow of death waved its huge scythe, bouncing off the swords of spirit speech. Then, countless shadows of death pounced on the swords of spirit speech, waving their blades together and shattering the swords of spirit speech. The entire disaster world had completely turned into a battlefield between the swords of spirit speech and the shadow of death, turning the originally hellish scenery into a purgatory. Although there was no smell of blood, there were flashes of swords and screams everywhere, just like a nightmare. However, in general, the swords of spirit speech had the absolute advantage. After all, Noah already knew the true nature of the shadow's existence. He knew that they were just tentacles created by the eye, similar to the three-headed dragon's body. In a situation where he knew the truth, the swords of spirit speech were almost invincible, and the shadows of death were no match for them. However, both sides had an endless advantage in terms of numbers. Noah could continuously create swords of spirit speech. The enemy could continuously create the shadows of death. Therefore, in this side of the world, the conflict had never stopped. The swords of spirit speech and the shadows of death were completely entangled, killing each other in every corner of the crimson battlefield. In this war, if the commanders of both sides did not take action, then there would be no moment of peace. Noah knew this, and so did the enemy. Therefore, Noah closed his eyes and completely expanded his sensing ability, covering this side of the world. It was not until the world in his body was born that Noah realized that his sensing ability was actually the embodiment of the world's will. The world could sense anything that was happening in any corner of its body. This kind of sensing was an ability of the world itself. As the reincarnation of the original world, Noah could only roughly use this sensing ability to sense hostility, malice, and killing intent in the surroundings when the world that was equivalent to his soul had not been repaired and was still in a broken state. Moreover, the range was quite limited. Now that the world in his body had completed its transformation and his sensing ability had been fully restored, Noah could let it spread throughout the world and explore any corner of the world. It was only now that Noah's sensing ability could truly be said to be superb. And what Noah was doing now was to find the location of the eye. Under the cover of his sensing ability, everything that was happening in every corner of the disaster world was fed back to Noah's mind. However, since the sensing ability was a manifestation of the world's will, then, as a world-level existence, it was impossible for the enemy to not have it. Just as Noah activated his sensing ability, another kind of sensing ability turned into fluctuations and burst out from the depths of the dark red world. Like invisible chains, it first directly bound Noah's sensing ability. Then, like a solid barrier, it slowly pushed Noah's sensing ability back. It's being pushed back? Noah frowned, then felt relieved. That's right. Although they are both manifestations of the world's will, and their sensing abilities should be of the same level, this world is the enemy's world after all. Of course, the master's side has the advantage. Although he said this, a cold smile appeared on Noah's face. Raising his head, looking at the depths of the dark red world where the sensing ability fluctuations were bursting out, Noah spoke in a low voice. Even if I don't use my sensing ability, your position is already exposed, idiot. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah's figure moved and turned into a bright stream of light. In an instant, he crossed countless battlefields and swept toward the place where the sensing ability fluctuations were bursting out. In the dark red world, the shadows of death suddenly seemed to have been stimulated by something. They actually abandoned the battle at hand and madly rushed toward Noah's direction. For a moment, a large group of Red Reapers were like weightless ghosts swimming toward Noah. In an instant, an astonishing number gathered and once again became a dense wave. As the saying goes, once there were more than 10,000 people, it would become a sea of people. In this crimson world, the number of shadows of the Grim Reaper that could be created at will was endless. If one were to count them, one would have to add at least 1 trillion zeros behind one. Only with such a terrifying number could there be a way to fill up a world. However, Noah did not even look at the countless shadows of death that were surrounding him. He directly swept toward the deepest part of the dark red world. Instead, the swords of words of spirit appeared one after another. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. In the continuous sound of the air being pierced, countless swords of spiritual words shot out like a torrential rain, mercilessly slashing through. Poochie, 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 poochie. Tearing sounds were constantly heard, and the shadows of death were killed one after another by the swords of spiritual words. Noah, under the protection of countless swords of spiritual words, killed a path and swept toward the deepest part of the dark red world. Not long after, a black spot appeared in front of Noah's eyes. Chapter 2193. When the black that appeared in front of Noah's eyes, the shadows of death in all directions let out unwilling screams, causing the entire dark red world to tremble. It was extremely terrifying. However, just as the screams ended, Sharp swords of spirit speech cut through the sky and shot over, piercing through the shadows of death one by one. It was as if the shadows of death were torn apart like paper, killing them on the spot. Countless swords of spirit speech danced around Noah's body as he stared at the black that was getting bigger and bigger. His heart surged with unprecedented emotions. We finally meet. There was no attachment or hatred in this sentence. There was only an endless sense of mission. After all, it was because of the existence in front of him that Noah was born, experienced many worlds, and finally obtained the power he had today. It was all for the sake of ending things with the existence in front of him. It could be said that, without the existence of the I, there would be no Noah. Now that he finally met the person he was destined to fight, it was impossible for Noah's emotions not to swell. I have no hatred towards you. Although the other party was the culprit behind the destruction of countless worlds, this kind of destruction did not cause any fundamental destruction. Although Noah was angry, it was not considered hatred. But you should not have existed. At least, to the millions of worlds and billions of lives, the existence in front of him was a complete disaster. You should not have been born, but in the end, you were born, and that's how I came to be. Even so, Noah was not very grateful. For you and me, in the end, only one can survive. Either you die, or I die. And I don't want to die, because someone was waiting for Noah to return. Because someone was waiting for Noah to save them. So, let's settle this here and now. Noah's voice resounded throughout the dark red world, covering the screams of countless shadows of death and the sweeping of countless swords of spirit speech. It was clearly transmitted to the surroundings. At this moment, the shadows of death that were originally in a frenzy seemed to have lost their consciousness and suddenly stopped in midair. As for the black, it was quietly suspended in the air. There was not a single trace of aura coming from its body. It was as if it was dead. It was incomparably silent. However, Noah, who was moving faster than the speed of light and almost teleporting towards the black dot, clearly noticed it. In this scarlet-red world, the entire atmosphere changed, and it became extremely heavy. That kind of heaviness seemed to make the air seem to carry weight, fiercely suppressing the entire dark red space. Then Noah saw it. The black dot moved. Although it was called a black dot, Noah was actually able to see the black dot clearly from the fact that he had not arrived even after such a long time had passed. From this, one could tell that the black dot was terrifyingly large. Conservatively speaking, it was equivalent to the size of 100 stars. If it were not for the distance, and Noah's sensing ability enveloped this world, perhaps he would not be able to see the full appearance of the other party. Such a huge, dark existence, under the gaze of Noah, slowly turned around and faced the direction of Noah. Immediately, a crack that was many times larger than the abyss suddenly expanded. No, that was not a crack. That was just a gap that appeared when the eyelids were closed together. So, in the next second, the dark existence equivalent to the size of 100 stars suddenly turned into an eyeball. His eyes, which were as red as blood, stared straight at Noah, and a frightening and ferocious glint flashed in his eyes. At this moment, Noah felt as if his head was hit hard by someone, and his vision became blank. An invisible force, accompanied by the sight of the eye, drilled into Noah's mind and stirred Noah's consciousness into a mess. Then, the invisible force followed Noah's nerves, circulated through Noah's body, and finally swept towards the bright golden feather in Noah's heart. Buzzed, as if sensing a fatal danger, the world equivalent to Noah's soul suddenly trembled. Noah, who had lost consciousness, was directly awakened by the shock and immediately noticed the invisible force in his body that swept towards the soul world, and his expression changed abruptly. A face-to-face encounter. Just a face-to-face encounter. The other party directly attacked Noah's weakness, intending to kill Noah in an instant. Don't even think about it. Noah suddenly shouted in his heart. Suddenly, the world in Noah's body suddenly trembled again, releasing a huge amount of energy, like a substantial impact, fiercely colliding with the incoming invisible force. An earth-shattering roar sounded directly in Noah's mind, almost shaking Noah's consciousness again. The two forces that collided heavily in Noah's body seemed to cancel each other out, shaking each other and dissipating. However, the aftermath was like a ripple, spreading to Noah's whole body, stirring all of Noah's internal organs into pieces. Poochie. Noah directly spat out a mouthful of blood with minced flesh, and terrible pain passed through his whole body. The world in Noah's body immediately released energy, which turned into a huge vitality and instantly repaired all the injuries in Noah's body, making the pain come and go quickly. However, it didn't mean that it didn't happen. Noah himself knew. Just now, he had already walked around the gates of hell. This is just a face-to-face encounter. Noah couldn't help but tremble. However, Noah didn't know that. The opponent had been preparing for this attack for a long time, but it didn't succeed in killing him. Seeing that Noah's aura was still intact and undamaged, a ruthless emotion appeared in the giant pitch-black eyes. Then, circles of invisible waves rippled around the outline of the black eye, spreading through the entire dark red world and also the shadows of death. In the dark red world, the shadows of death let out sharp screeches in unison, and then their bodies were compressed like a mass of liquid, gradually changing into another shape. The shadows of the Grim Reaper transformed into blades. The blades were huge in size, and even if they weren't as big as the Black Eye, they were comparable to the size of a mountain. The huge blades rotated and cut across the space, like sharp blade lights, slashing towards Noah's direction at an astonishing speed. Under the dancing of the huge blades, the long distance was wiped out in an instant. The overwhelming blood-red blades shrouded Noah from all directions in the blink of an eye, and then rushed straight towards him. The sharp blade lights made Noah's skin feel as if it had been pricked, and he was suddenly awakened from the movement in his body. Looking at the huge blades shooting towards him from all directions, Noah was slightly shocked. He didn't care so much and used his full speed, turning into a phantom and disappearing on the spot. Now, Noah could use the power of the 10 incarnations at any time, Among these 10 incarnations, there was the Phoenix incarnation that could control time, and the Dragon Emperor incarnation that could infinitely increase his strength in the true sense. In addition to the support of the other incarnations, once he dodged, it was really impossible to be hit. Even if the opponent was an existence of the same level, it was the same. Unfortunately, that was under equal conditions. Not long after Noah disappeared, the whole dark red world suddenly swayed. Along with this swaying motion, the space and time of the entire crimson world froze. Noah, who had entered the torrent of time to move at a high speed, only felt that his body was suddenly thrown into a sticky swamp. Not only was he blasted out of the torrent of time, but even his body, which was moving at high speed, was stagnant because of the solidification of space and could no longer move. Shoo. In all directions around Noah, huge blades immediately broke through the solidified space like fins breaking through the water and shrouded in the direction of Noah like a storm. The cold saber radiance made Noah's pupils shrink abruptly. Chapter 2194. In terms of level, Noah and Black Eye were undoubtedly on the same level. After all, a world was the highest level, and there was no existence higher than this. The reason Black Eye could destroy thousands of worlds was not because its strength was higher than other worlds. In terms of pure strength, Black Eye was on the same level as a world, but compared to thousands of worlds, it could not be compared at all. Thus, Black Eye could destroy thousands of worlds only because of its own essence. Worlds could not interfere with other worlds. This rule was not effective against Black Eye, who absorbed the evil thoughts of the origin world and was born to be a disaster. This way, thousands of worlds could not interfere with it, but it could interfere with thousands of worlds at will. Even if they were on the same level, if one side could only take a beating, then no matter how many there were, it was only a matter of time before all of them were defeated. Only Noah, as the reincarnation of the origin world, had the same power as Black Eye to interfere with other worlds. After all, whether it was the fantasy world or the disaster world, they were all born from the fantasy and evil thoughts of the origin world. Thus, Noah was like Black Eye, born with the essence of interfering with other worlds. In other words, Noah and Black Eye had the same conditions, and their strength was on the same level. If they wanted to determine who was better, they would naturally have to fight to the death to see who would emerge victorious. Logically speaking, if they were on the same level of strength, it would not be so easy to determine the victor. However, as soon as the fight started, Noah was killed twice. Because there was no other reason. It was because Noah was now in Black Eye's world. This was Black Eye's world. Just like Noah could do whatever he wanted with the world in his body, Black Eye could also do whatever he wanted with this world. Thus, Black Eye could freeze the space and time of an entire world with just a thought. In this way, Noah's Phoenix avatar, which could control the flow of time, was completely ineffective, and it was not even allowed to move. The opponent had an entire world as support. Noah, on the other hand, only had a single sword. In a situation where they were on the same level of strength, with this additional advantage, Noah naturally fell into an absolute disadvantage. This was also the reason why Gaia and Aleia advised Noah not to act rashly from the start. However, the only way to defeat Black Eye was to enter this world. For Noah, this was an unavoidable disadvantage. Since that was the case, he could only fight. Haya, looking at the endless huge blades cutting through the sky and slashing at him like a storm, Noah, who was bound by the frozen space, slowly clenched his fists. The veins on his temples bulged as he roared out loud. Bang! A terrifying energy storm suddenly surged from Noah's body, turning into a substantial impact that shook in all directions. Bang! Accompanied by the sound of glass shattering. The space around Noah was shattered into pieces by the shockwave. After shattering the frozen space, Noah instantly regained his freedom. There was no hesitation at all. Noah raised the parting sword, Ea, in his hand, which contained the authority of the 10 incarnations. His body was like a phantom as he continuously swung the sword towards the blade storm that was coming at him from all directions. Clang! The first blade that shot towards him was fiercely deflected by the obedient separation sword. Clang, 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 clang. In a short moment, the blades came crashing down, but they were met with the sword tip of the Guai sword. After a series of dazzling sword dance, the blades were all bounced away. In the end, the countless blades that were as large as mountains were all deflected by the small. At a speed faster than when they came, they were all deflected by the... Immediately after, Noah poured all of the terrifying energy in his body into the parting sword in his hand. 1. The most powerful weapon known as the Guile Separation Sword, Ea, which had gathered the authority of the 10 incarnations, suddenly shuddered. Energy, turbulence visible to the naked eye surged all over the sword like a gale. The energy turbulence was not red like the original. Instead, it was golden like the world in Noah's inner world. The incomparably bright turbulence surged on the body of the E. The more it surged, the more violent it became. The star of creation of heaven and earth, Enuma Elish. Regardless of whether it was the true name of the relic or the true name of the relic when it was at full power, it was no different from the original. However, the difference in power between the two was like heaven and earth. Although the original, Ea, could cut open the world and was known as the sword that could split heaven and earth, in reality, it could not truly split heaven and earth apart. It could only display a small part of its power. However, the power of the new parting sword, which was created by combining all the power of Noah's 10 incarnations and using the world-level weapon refinement, was finally able to display the full power of the original version of the weapon. When Noah unleashed his most powerful attack, the bright golden turbulence turned into a raging storm that swept across the entire disaster world. Bang, 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 bang. Wherever the storm passed, space shattered inch by inch. Time was thrown into chaos, causing the world itself to collapse as if it was disintegrating. That scene was simply like a world made purely of mirrors shattering and disintegrating. Thus, the storm swept across the sky, causing the entire sky to be split into two halves. Thus, the storm swept across the earth, causing the earth to be completely split apart, causing faults to appear. Huge blades were annihilated one after another. Every inch of solid space shattered. The entire world of disaster seemed to have been cleaved in half by a single slash of a sword. That scene could be said to be the end of the world. Witnessing this scene with his own eyes, the whites of Black Eye's eyes began to turn red. It was obvious that he was extremely angry. Fortunately, this world only belonged to Black Eye. Just like how Noah could open up a universe and create planets in his inner world with a single thought, Black Eye could do the same thing. Thus, Black Eye's pupils flashed with light. Clang! Suddenly, the entire disaster world seemed to have solidified. The phenomenon of the sky shattering and the earth shattering suddenly stopped. Wong! Following the trembling of the world, it was as if this world had entered a state of time reversal. The entire world began to undergo a great change. The shattered sky gradually recovered. The fractured earth slowly closed up. Even the shattered space fragments seemed to have returned to their original positions, one by one, as if they were glued back together and restored to perfect condition. In less than a second, the entire disaster world seemed to have not suffered any damage at all and became perfect again. Only then did Black Eye's pupils gradually return to their original color. As if he was satisfied with this, a hint of pride flashed across his eyes. On the other side, Noah, who had just split the world in half, gradually calmed down the fluctuations of the sword in his hand, causing the bright golden turbulence to dissipate one by one, no longer wreaking havoc. Noah, who was holding the sword in his hand, looked at the undamaged world, then looked at Black Eye, who was flashing with pride, and was secretly speechless. Just as I expected, Black Eye's method of existence is completely opposite to my method of existence. Noah used the inner world as the source of his soul. As long as the inner world was not destroyed, he would not die nor be destroyed. Black Eye, on the other hand, used his own body as the source of his soul. As long as his body was not destroyed, he could easily recover no matter how much the world disintegrated. Even if he was attacked by a power of the same level, it would be the same. This way, no matter how I attack this world, it would be useless. Noah looked at Black Eye. If I want to win, I have to attack the main body. The moment this thought flashed through his mind, Noah acted. Whoosh! Noah's speed was once again at full speed, turning into a phantom. As if he had teleported, he flew in Black Eye's direction. In order to prevent space-time from being frozen by Black Eye again and completely falling into a passive state, Noah continuously poured the endless energy provided by the inner world into the sword, preparing to break through space-time at any time. However, Black Eye did not seem to intend to use the same trick again. Chapter 2195. Just as Noah was about to unleash the full power of the good separation sword, the next moment, the scene that appeared in front of him made Noah stunned. The Black Eye that was suspended in midair suddenly became abnormally blurry, like a mirage, extremely illusory. Then, the illusory figure changed again. From 1 to 2. Instead of 2, there were 4. Instead of 4, there were 8. Instead of 8, there were 16. In less than a second, the Black Eye that was 100 times larger than a star suddenly became countless, filling Noah's entire field of vision. Wah! Noah stopped in shock. Doppelganger? Moreover, they were not ordinary doppelganger. At least, from what Noah could sense, each of the doppelganger was not a simple illusion. All of them are doppelganger? Noah sensed it for a moment and immediately understood. You want to use this method to confuse me and not let me cause any harm? Noah held onto the good separation sword, tightly. If that's the case, I'll clean them all up. A boundless amount of energy was channeled into the heaven-splitting earth relic, causing the blade of the Gwaili sword to once again emit a resplendent golden wind pressure. Creation star of heaven and earth, Enuma Elish. A storm suddenly appeared. Just like before, As Noah released the full power of the creation paragon's true name, the creation paragon's wind pressure turned into a turbulent flow. It was like a storm, but also like a tornado. With the most violent manner, it swept through any space that it passed, causing the sky to shatter once again and the ground to crack once again. The entire world could not help but disintegrate, collapse, and shatter into pieces. The violent wind pressure swept through the entire disaster world and turned into a space-time fault that swept through everything, sweeping towards the countless black eyes. The momentum was extremely terrifying. In response to this, the countless number of black eyes suddenly lit up. At this moment, an explosion sounded behind the countless black eyes, causing the space to instantly turn into a dark red void. In the void, the black eyes were like jewels embedded in a kaleidoscope. They circled around and arranged themselves into a formation in the crimson void, forming an extremely mysterious and ominous pattern. The pattern was like a mirror. It was unusually smooth, making the dark red void look like a dazzling kaleidoscope. It was exceptionally beautiful. However, looking at the beautiful kaleidoscope, Noah's heart tightened, and a thought instantly flashed through his mind. Could it be? Sensing what the black eyes were planning to do, Noah did not hesitate and immediately tightened his grip on the good separation sword in his hand, imbuing it with an endless amount of energy and suddenly piercing the sword. A violent wind pressure suddenly appeared, forming a second storm that swept through the entire disaster world, wreaking havoc with all its might, strangling everything in its path as it violently shot forward. At the same time, the first storm of sword pressure that tore the entire disaster world apart also arrived in front of the kaleidoscope, ruthlessly slamming into it without any hesitation. When the wind pressure of the good separation sword landed on the exceptionally beautiful kaleidoscope, a wave of chaotic energy flowed through the kaleidoscope, causing the entire kaleidoscope to suddenly tremble. Under such circumstances, the wind pressure of the fully released good separation sword suddenly spun, as if it was reflected back, and suddenly shot across the entire disaster world at an even more terrifying speed than when it came, attacking Noah's direction. This sudden change was definitely impossible to guard against. Not to mention, the power of the reflected wind pressure of the good separation sword did not decrease in the slightest, and the speed at which it swept forward was many times faster than before. It was definitely capable of catching anyone off guard and ultimately annihilating them with a single blow. However, the wind pressure that was reflected back suddenly met with another wind pressure that tore apart the heavens and earth. In an instant, the heavens and earth shook, and time and space became chaotic. Under the earth-shattering roar, the two wind pressures of the same origin fiercely collided with each other. It was like two stars colliding with each other in the universe, setting off a terrifying impact storm and wind turbulence that blew in all directions. Both were at the full power release of the good separation sword, and either of the two attacks was enough to destroy an entire world. Now that they had collided with each other, although they had canceled out a lot of the power, the aftermath still caused the entire disaster world to shake violently, and finally, it could not bear the burden and completely collapsed. Bang! An unprecedentedly loud, shattering sound rang out, causing the entire crimson world to explode and turn into nothingness. Under that explosion, even the kaleidoscope made up of countless black eyes shattered like glass, completely disappearing, causing the black eyes embedded in it to scatter like sparks, scattering to the surroundings. Suddenly, within the countless black eyes, there was a look of astonishment. Obviously, Black Eye didn't expect Noah to see through his plan and release his power one more time ahead of time. Not only did he manage to avert danger, he even destroyed the entire disaster world and resolved the crisis. If he had not anticipated this beforehand and released the power of the good separation sword, again, Noah would have had an 80% chance of dying under his own attack. Now that it was resolved just like that, how could Black Eyes not be astonished? Unfortunately, the Black Eyes who were so astonished did not know. When you see a mirror, the first thing you think of is naturally reflection. A sarcastic voice rang out from behind one of the countless scattered black eyes. Although you possess incomparably great power, you've been hiding in this disaster world all this time. Ever since you were born, you've been determined to destroy one world after another. You don't have any experience at all, so even if you do possess extraordinary intelligence, it's still useless. As soon as the voice fell, the sharp sword, which was covered with red vein-like patterns, slashed through nothingness. Poochie! With a tearing sound, the sharp sword directly cut Black Eye into two halves, causing dark red blood to splatter in all directions like an explosion of water. At this moment, the countless black eyes let out silent screams, pain appearing in their eyes. Seeing this scene, Noah's eyes lit up. So that's how it is. Although there are countless doppelgangers, their senses are connected. Even if they're not injured, the pain when the doppelgangers are injured will still be transmitted to the main body. Understanding this point, Noah suddenly raised the parting sword in his hand and looked at the countless black eyes with a cold look in his eyes. Then let's give you a big one. A bright golden wind pressure rose from the sword and suddenly swept out. Heaven and earth parting star, Enoma Elish. This time, there was no earth-shattering scene, nor was there any doomsday-like movement. This was because this world had just collapsed, leaving only nothingness. Therefore, when the terrifying wind pressure once again turned into a storm, like a huge golden tornado, a blow that could split heaven and earth silently swept through the void, swallowing countless black eyes with unparalleled speed. And this time, the countless black eyes did not even have the chance to scream. They were all annihilated by the wind pressure that could split the world, disappearing without a trace. Just like that, the bright golden wind pressure wreaked havoc everywhere in the void, sweeping wildly. It was many times more terrifying than any kind of typhoon. Under such a terrifying wind pressure, countless black eyes were annihilated and disappeared. In the end, only one black eye was left. It escaped from the terrifying wind pressure that symbolized destruction and luckily survived. However, the black eye's condition was not very good. On the huge eyeball that was hundreds of times larger than a star, hideous wounds covered every corner, causing large amounts of blood to flow out. It was extremely miserable. An unimaginable pain assaulted the black eye, causing its pupils to be filled with pain. Even the whites of its eyes were bloodshot. It was clear that Black Eye had suffered substantial damage this time. That damage caused the black eye to be in great pain and at the same time furious. However, in the next second, the black eye's pupils suddenly shrank. The reason for that was because a figure had appeared before it without making a sound. It's over. Noah's gaze met with the black eye that was filled with fear. He suddenly raised the parting sword in his hand and slashed down with all his might. Chapter 2196. A cold arc of light flashed across the sharp blade, causing the treasure artifact named Obedient Parting Sword to cut through the air. Like a sharp blade, it slashed down heavily towards the huge black eye. At this moment, in order to pursue a one-hit kill, Noah's body expanded countless times. One of the 10 incarnations of authority that resided in Noah's body, Giant. After transforming into a world-level authority, this incarnation was able to provide monstrous strength to an earth-shattering level. It could even allow Noah's body to expand at will. At this moment, Noah used this ability to expand his body into a giant that could cover the sky. His body became the same size as the huge black eye, and the obedient parting sword expanded countless times, turning into a huge sword that could tear the heavens and earth apart and slash down fiercely. Although this attack did not release his real name, the weapon that gathered all of Noah's strength was still enough to split the world. Therefore, the black eye really did feel the threat of death. In this crisis, the black eye's pupils that had shrunk suddenly lit up. Clang! A dazzling crimson light suddenly flashed in the black eye's pupils, illuminating the entire surroundings. Noah's sword that was slashing down suddenly stopped, because, under the crimson light, an invisible force entered Noah's body. Just like when Noah was fighting with the black eye, it first messed up Noah's consciousness, then suddenly turned around and swept towards Noah's inner world. In this crisis, the black eye once again chose to attack the soul. However, after the first time, it was impossible for Noah not to be on guard against this kind of ability that directly attacked his soul. Therefore, when the invisible force attacked Noah's inner world, the bright golden feather in Noah's heart trembled and surged with energy. However, this time, the energy didn't collide with the invisible force. Instead, it suddenly twisted and expanded like a net, directly covering the invisible force that was about to attack. Therefore, the invisible force crashed back and forth in the huge energy net, but it could not break out at all. In the end, it could only be gradually eliminated by the endless energy in Noah's inner world. It was complicated to say, but in fact, the black eye's soul attack only caused Noah's attack to pause for a moment before it was neutralized. This pause was only 0.001 seconds. However, this 0.001 seconds was enough for the black eye. When Noah's consciousness recovered after 0.001 seconds, the huge black eye had already retreated to a sufficient distance with a whoosh sound. Noah could not help but smacked his lips. It's not that easy. However, there was no doubt that victory was in Noah's favor. Compared to the absolute disadvantage at the beginning, Noah finally had an absolute advantage now. The hideous wounds on the black eye's body were bleeding profusely. It was obvious that the injury was not light, and even his strength had decreased a lot. At least, Noah could sense that the black eye's aura had weakened a lot. If the battle continued like this, even if this is still the enemy's territory, victory will belong to me in the end. At that time, everything would really be over. Just as Noah was thinking about this, something unexpected happened. The black eye's pupils, which were full of wounds, stared at Noah with anger, violence, ferocity, madness, and other emotions. Then they suddenly calmed down. In the next moment, the black eye's pupils lit up again. Buzz! With a tremor, a figure gradually condensed in front of the black eye's pupils. The figure was only the size of a normal person. It was not as large as Noah and the black eye, whose body was many times larger than a star. Compared to Noah and the black eye, it was even smaller than an ant. However, Noah's eyes slowly narrowed when he saw the figure. That was because the figure was exactly the same as Noah. Only the pupils of his eyes were dark red, presenting a kind of intoxicating wine-red color. Under Noah's gaze, the figure raised its head and looked at Noah. It looked exactly the same as Noah and spoke with the same voice. "Can we talk?" As soon as this was said, Noah was completely stunned. The moment the figure appeared, Noah's sensing ability had already scanned the other party. Therefore, Noah knew that the figure in front of him was not created by the black eye to disgust him. It was just an incarnation condensed from the black eye's will and had no combat power. At first, Noah was still wondering what the black eye was planning to do, but now he understood. The black eye wanted to talk to him. This development immediately made countless guesses in Noah's mind. His first guess was that the other party was trying to stall for time to recover from his injuries. However, as soon as this guess arose, the incarnation of the black eye laughed. "You don't have to worry that I'm stalling for time. I think you should know that my body is the origin of this world, just like the world in your body is the origin of your soul. Once it's damaged, it won't be easy to recover, unlike your body and my world, which can be recovered easily. I really want to talk to you," the black eye said with great sincerity. "Anyway, you can't kill me for a while. Why don't we talk and discuss a plan that benefits both of us? A plan that benefits both of us." Noah looked down at the tiny figure and sneered. "Do you think it's possible for us to get along?" "Why not?" The black eye sighed. "I know that you're a hope born to protect thousands of worlds, while I'm a disaster born to destroy thousands of worlds. You must treat me as an irreconcilable enemy, but think about it. In the primitive era, humans instinctively hunted to fill their stomachs and survive. I'm the same. It's only out of instinct that I hunted thousands of worlds, just like humans. Don't tell me that someone like me doesn't have value." The black eye's tone was filled with sorrow and helplessness. It was definitely enough to move any emotional person. Unfortunately, Noah only looked at him coldly and said indifferently, "It's precisely because there's a brutal side to human nature that humans need to use reason to control themselves. Your nature has the factor of hunting thousands of worlds, but there's also the existence of reason. However, your reason hasn't been used to control your nature, which means that you've never thought that this is wrong. Since that's the case, there's no reason for you to absolve yourself of this. I'm not trying to excuse myself. I'm just speaking the truth." The black eye's eyes turned slightly, and his tone suddenly changed. "Actually, although I destroyed many worlds, I didn't destroy those worlds fundamentally. As long as you still exist, those worlds will be restored sooner or later. Since that's the case, why do we still have to fight to the death? We don't have much enmity between us, do we?" The black eye smiled. "I can promise you that I won't hunt thousands of worlds in the future. That way, we can completely coexist, right? Won't hunt thousands of worlds in the future." Noah immediately looked directly at the black eye's incarnation. The incarnation of the black eye met Noah's gaze with a smile on his face. Even the original body of the black eye stared straight at Noah. He didn't make any more attacks, as if he wanted to prove his sincerity to Noah. Looking at the incarnation of the black eye and black eye, Noah fell silent. However, just when the black eye thought that Noah was starting to consider, Noah suddenly stepped on the void and rushed to the front of the black eye. "You?" The expression of the incarnation of the black eye changed greatly. "You've always wanted to kill me and made the world sacrifice themselves in order to buy time for me. Now, you're saying that you want to coexist with me?" Noah's voice was full of anger. "In your dreams." As soon as he finished speaking, a cold sword light suddenly flashed and slashed through the black eye, who was full of shock and anger. "Poochie!" The sharp blade cut through Black Eye's pupil and cut off his eye membrane. Black Eye was completely cut in half, and he was killed on the spot. "Bastard! Despicable bastard!" The incarnation of the black eye roared angrily and immediately disappeared on the spot. However, Noah's expression suddenly changed. This was because a red light suddenly shot out from the black eye that was killed by Noah on the spot and headed straight for Noah. Chapter 2197. When the blinding red light burst out from the black eye, the entire disaster world that had been reduced to nothingness reacted intensely. From this reaction alone, Noah could guess that the red light in front of him was definitely not a normal attack. As an existence of the same level as the world, it was obvious that it was not a normal attack before its death. Moreover, in Noah's heart, the fatal sense of danger seemed to have exploded as it screeched madly. All these scenes were telling Noah that he was in a bad mood. He had encountered an unimaginable danger. Therefore, in a trillionth of a second, Noah made the decision to dodge without hesitation. However, in the next moment, Noah's heart tightened. Wong. He saw that the entire world of disaster that had reacted violently began to tremble violently, causing circles of ripples to reverberate in every corner, causing the void of this world to freeze. Space was frozen. Time was frozen. Noah could not rely on the power of authority to control the torrent of time at all. Even his body was frozen in place. Without a doubt, Black Eye controlled this world and restricted Noah's movements. At that moment, Noah suddenly roared as a shocking energy flow burst out from his body, forcefully breaking through the frozen space and time. With a jolt, he regained his freedom. However, it was a little too late to regain his freedom now. A comet-like red light streaked across the sky and was imprinted in Noah's eyes. Looking at the red light that was shooting towards him, Noah's pupils slowly shrank to the size of a needle tip. The fatal sense of danger in his heart screeched madly, causing Noah's heart to tremble. In the nick of time, Noah suddenly raised the parting sword in his hand and blocked in front of him. However, the red light that was shooting towards him at an astonishing speed directly passed through Noah's strongest weapon that gathered all of his power. Under Noah's abrupt change in expression, it flashed and disappeared into Noah's left eye. Following a boom, an extremely powerful will rushed into Noah's body and into Noah's mind. Noah's expression changed drastically. He only had time to react to this extent before an unimaginable pain assaulted Noah. The pain was as if Noah was being cut in half. Noah could not help but bend down and cover his head. Ugh, ugh. An uncontrollable groan of agony burst out from Noah's mouth. Upon closer inspection, Noah's left eye began to change. The original star-like deep black was gradually replaced by an enchanting wine-red color. Then, an even more terrifying pain assaulted Noah. You? Noah clutched his head, his eyes bloodshot. You actually attacked my will directly and wanted to destroy my consciousness. Yes. At this moment, Noah was suffering a direct attack on his will. Ha ha! An extremely violent and venomous laughter rang out in Noah's mind. Attacking your body is of no use. Attacking your soul is of no use. Since that is the case, I will directly attack your will and destroy it, turning you into a vegetable. Stupid. Noah endured the pain of having his head cut open and laughed coldly. Your original body has already been killed by me. Do you think you can win against me? You are the stupid one. Black Eye roared. The violence and venom in his voice became even more obvious. Although my original body is the origin of this world, I also have a soul. As long as my soul is not destroyed, I will never be destroyed. Next, I will completely destroy your will and take over the world in your body. At that time, not only will you die, but your body will also belong to me. Now, I will completely absorb the power of this world that belongs to me. Black Eye roared. I don't believe that I can't defeat you like this. Black Eye's voice had just fallen when the dark red world around Noah suddenly trembled and gradually turned into a stream of energy turbulence. Like a stream of red air, it flowed in the direction of Noah. Kaboom! In the roar, the dark red world was completely shattered, like a smashed mirror, disintegrating into countless fragments. As the disaster world disintegrated, the dark red space was replaced by a pure white space. Noah had impressively returned to the world between worlds. However, there were countless fragments floating around Noah. These fragments all turned into streams of energy turbulence and surged into Noah's dark red eyes. With the influx of these turbulence, Noah's will also suffered a crazy impact. Ugh, ugh. Finally, the unimaginable impact on his will made Noah cry out in extreme pain. It should be known that with Noah's temperament, even if the cruelest torture was used on him, he would not cry out. But at that moment, Noah couldn't help but shriek in pain. The pain in his voice couldn't be more obvious. One could only imagine what kind of torture Noah was going through. At least in Noah's perception, that kind of pain was no longer comparable to the physical pain. It was a terrible torture that tore his soul apart. Painful, right? Very painful, right? Black Eye's cruel laughter rang in Noah's mind once again. I was born from the absorption of evil thoughts. Now that I have invaded your will and soul, and with the support of all the power of one side of the world, even you can't resist this kind of pain. Obediently give me your body and soul. When I have taken over your body, your soul, and the world in your body, then not only can I completely get rid of the previous situation of being unable to leave one side of the world, I can even obtain the power of two worlds. At that time, in the thousands of worlds, who can resist me? No one. No one can resist me. Ha ha ha. Under Black Eye's complacent laughter, not only Noah's will, but even the world in his body, which was the source of Noah's soul, was finally invaded. Hum 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 hum. In Noah's heart, the bright golden feather trembled violently, and a terrifying surge of energy emerged in an attempt to resist. However, Black Eye's invasion was also supported by one side of the world, and, as the amalgamation of evil thoughts, it was extremely good at invading and invading. Noah's world could not resist at all. Therefore, under the impact of the invisible force, the endless energy that emerged from Noah's world and his body seemed to be defeated and retreated. Then, the power of the world of disaster finally invaded the origin world. Noah, who was suffering from the attack of intense pain, clearly felt it. The world in his body was gradually changing. The universe still existed. The stars still existed. The Milky Way still existed. The planets still existed. However, the universe, the stars, the Milky Way, the planets, and so on, everything seemed to be polluted. At an astonishing speed, it turned into a blood-red color. Even the scenery on Earth was being polluted. Mountains turned red. Forests turned red. Lakes turned red. Even the sky, earth, and sea turned red bit by bit, gradually being invaded. And in Noah's heart, the bright golden feather also began to turn red, looking extremely ominous. In the blink of an eye, half of the entire feather was invaded. Noah knew, once his world and his body was completely dyed red, then his world and his body would truly change owners. And at that time, Noah's soul would be invaded, his will would be wiped out, and only a shell would be left, allowing Black Eye to do whatever it wanted. Understanding this, Noah suddenly smiled. Want to use my body to hurt thousands of worlds and billions of lives? Noah murmured, if you can do it, then go ahead and try. As soon as his voice fell, clang, the feather that was gradually dyed red suddenly bloomed with an unprecedented dazzling light. Under the light, the feather shattered and turned into a turbulent flow of energy, rushing toward Noah's right eye. Suddenly, Noah's right eye gradually turned into a bright golden color. In an instant, there was another boom in Noah's mind, and his whole body went berserk. At this moment, Noah's will burst out with endless power, entangling with Black Eye's will. Chapter 2198. At this moment, in Noah's mind, the two wills collided crazily, stirring up the whole sea of consciousness. These two wills, one was bright gold, the other was ominous red. Like two thunderbolts, they kept colliding, and colliding again. Boom, boom, boom. Under the collision of the two wills, Noah's mind kept on trembling and on the verge of collapsing. It gave off a feeling that it could collapse at any moment. However, that was not strange at all. After all, the two wills colliding in Noah's mind were supported by all the power of one side of the world. In the sky of the pure white world, Noah floated there, his hands hugging his head tightly. His eyes had completely turned red and gold, and the whites of his eyes were completely bloodshot. Even his temples were bulging with green veins that would make one's heart palpitate. Under the constant collision of the two wills, terrible pain kept attacking Noah. Every time the two wills in his mind collided, Noah would suffer extraordinary pain. The pain of having one's soul being torn apart happened so frequently. It was the most terrifying torture. But even so, Noah still controlled his own wills, and with the support of one side of the world, he kept colliding with the other wills crazily. One collision, two collisions, three collisions, boom, boom, boom. For collisions, 5 collisions, 10 collisions, 100 collisions. Noah's eyes were about to split open, and his mind was about to collapse, but he still controlled his own wills crazily to collide with them. Why? Why? The will of Black Eye let out an incredulous and crazy roar. Why can't I defeat his will? Even if both wills were supported by one side of the world, one was a weak will that had lived for less than 10 years, while the other was a will that was formed by countless evil thoughts. When they collided, it was like an egg hitting a rock or a tofu hitting a cement. There was only to think about who would win and who would lose. However, after hundreds of collisions, the will of the egg and tofu did not weaken at all. Instead, the will of the rock and cement was being wiped out little by little. Impossible! Black Eye roared crazily. How could such a thing happen? However, Noah did not hear Black Eye's roar at all. It was because in Noah's heart, familiar scenes were appearing one after another. Among them, there were scenes of Noah cultivating in the deep mountains and forests for years in order to learn magic. Among them, there were scenes of Noah fighting against various evil forces in order to help a group of children. Among them, there were scenes of Noah fighting to protect his friends. Among them, there were also scenes of Noah traveling to various worlds in order to search for world fragments. These scenes were all Noah's life experiences. These experiences were indeed less than 10 years. However, for Noah, these experiences were more profound than 100 years, 1,000 years, or even 10,000 years. In addition to the scenes, faces also appeared in Noah's mind. There was Myra's gentle and smiling face. There was Lasana's playful and cute face. There was the holy and pure face of the Holy Son. There was Luo Hao's willful and reckless face. There was Shue's weak and strong face. There was Wendy's satisfied and sweet face. There were also the faces of young girls, close friends, relatives, and companions who were smiling, crying, angry, or sad. I can't lose for the most important person in my heart. I can't lose for the most precious memory in my heart. I can't lose for fulfilling the promise of returning. I can't lose for a more and better life in the future. I can't lose. All the scenes, all the faces, all the memories, all the wishes. At this moment, all of them turned into endless will, making Noah's will extremely strong. Like the falling sky, it fiercely suppressed Black Eye's will. An earth-shattering roar exploded in Noah's mind. The powerful will, like the falling sky, shattered the will of all the evil thoughts and evil thoughts. Like a beast, it completely tore them apart and shattered them. No, impossible. How can I lose to a fragile will that has only been around for less than 10 years? I am the eye of disaster that has gathered all the evil thoughts and evil thoughts. Even the thousands of worlds can only be slaughtered by me. How can I lose? How is it possible? I don't believe it. I don't believe it. In the roar full of resentment and unwillingness, Black Eye's will was completely annihilated and disappeared without a trace. The terrible pain that attacked Noah's mind finally stopped completely at this moment. Ha! 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 In the sky of the pure white world, Noah floated there. His whole body was completely wet as if he had just been fished out of the water. Of course, it wasn't water, but Noah's sweat. Noah panted violently, and a pair of red and gold eyes, filled with a strange, evil feeling, surged with all kinds of complicated emotions. There was joy. There was luck. There was absent-mindedness. There was fatigue. Did it work? No one answered Noah's question. However, Noah soon got the answer. Because, even in a state of extreme exhaustion, Noah could still clearly feel it. Within his pair of red and gold eyes, an extremely terrifying power was bursting forth, continuously flowing into his body. The power that burst forth from the golden eyes was the power of the origin world. The power radiating from the red eyes was the power of the world of disaster. Just like how Black Eye wanted to invade Noah's world and occupy the power of Noah's side of the world, after erasing Black Eye's will, Black Eye's side of the world was completely invaded by Noah and became Noah's power. Therefore, in this moment, the power that flowed in Noah's body was the power of two worlds. The power of two worlds that belonged to Noah alone. In the end, not only did Noah eliminate the culprit that harmed thousands of worlds, he even occupied the other side of the world and became even more powerful. Ha! Ha! Ha ha! Noah let out a carefree laugh. Then, the laughter became weaker and weaker. After hundreds of collisions of wills, the fatigue and torture that Noah suffered became unimaginable. Even if the two worlds could provide endless power, it couldn't eliminate the fatigue and torture on the will. In the next moment, Noah couldn't hold on anymore. His body went soft and fell directly from the sky. Whoosh! The wind whistled in his ears. However, Noah's eyes were closed as if he had lost consciousness. His body kept falling, and he didn't move at all. Under such circumstances, Noah's falling speed became faster and faster. Just as Noah was about to hit the ground, two petite figures suddenly flashed beside Noah. They stretched out their hands and gently supported Noah's body. They slowly descended and landed on the ground. Only then did Noah tiredly open his eyes. Two faces were imprinted in Noah's eyes. Young but cute. In the pure, white space, feather after feather danced in the air. It was unusually joyous. On the pure white ground, the two petite girls sat opposite each other. They let Noah rest on their slender thighs and lay on the ground. Then, while gently stroking Noah's forehead, they revealed gentle smiles to Noah. Looking at the two familiar young faces, Noah squeezed out a voice with difficulty. Gaia, Aleya. The two great restraints nodded, and the expression on their faces became even gentler. Looking at Noah's red and gold eyes, Gaia and Aleya seemed to understand what Noah did. Like a mother comforting a child, they gently stroked Noah's head. You've worked hard, little Noah. Gaia smiled. You've done a good job. Thanks to you, thousands of worlds have gained vitality. Aleya also revealed a rare smile. You've really worked hard. Hearing this, Noah seemed to have completely relaxed. He closed his heterochromatic eyes, and a peaceful expression appeared on his face. In the surroundings, feathers immediately flew over and revolved around Noah, Gaia, and Aleya. That scene was as beautiful as a painting. Chapter 2199. Before the sun rose, a certain school became very lively in the early hours of the morning. On the field, students in gymnastics uniforms were jogging while adjusting their breathing. There were many of these students, if not thousands. There were at least a few hundred. Furthermore, it was an unorganized and spontaneous action. For a school to have so many people taking the initiative to do morning exercises before the sun had even risen, it could be said to be a very inconceivable thing. However, this was a common occurrence in this school. Howling Academy. It was a school that specialized in cultivating combat skills. For this school, if they did not work hard, they would be eliminated. This was because it did not cultivate talents, but experimental subjects. Therefore, for the students who could stay in the school, the morning jogging was just a leisure time. When it was time to train, it would be hard work. Under such circumstances, a few figures gathered at the edge of the field. After greeting each other, they began to run on the field at the same time. There were a few young girls in their prime. They were Ivanli, Julie, Lilith, Gaugaya, and Orange Bar. The group of girls was also jogging on the field, talking as they ran. They seemed to be in a good mood. However, not long after, the group of girls widened their eyes at the same time. This was because next to the group of girls, a person was slowly running past them. That is, Ivanli, Julie, Lilith, Gaugaya, and Orange Bar were all stunned. For a moment, they seemed to be in a daze. In response to this, the person who slowly ran past the girls raised his hand without turning his head, lightly waving and saying this. If you don't catch up, I'll leave you behind. Hearing this voice, the girls finally reacted. Noah, Ivanli Noah, Julie Noah, Lilith Noah, Noah, Gaga no way, Orange Bar. The group of girls was completely confused. At this time, Noah just turned around and gave the group of girls a teasing expression, then continued to run forward. In the blink of an eye, he was almost out of the girls' sight. Seeing this, the girls could no longer care so much. Wait, Ivanli, wait. Julie, what the hell is going on? Lilith didn't Noah go out on a mission? Gaugaya, explain it to me. Orange Bar. The group of girls who were yelling hurriedly ran to catch up with Noah. Looking at the group of girls who were desperately trying to catch up, the corners of Noah's mouth slowly curled up. As if he was playing a prank, he quickened his pace and once again widened the distance between him and the group of girls. When the girls caught up with Noah, the sun had already risen. Although the explanation was indispensable, before that, Noah gave the girls a word of advice. I say, do you want to leave with me? At this moment, the girls completely lost their composure. At the end of a steep slope deep in the mountains, there was an old manor house. In the manor house, a girl was walking in a corridor. She was holding a thick book in her hand. There was no trace of emotion on her face. Her pupils were as deep as black holes. She had a mysterious temperament all over her body. Her figure was almost exactly the same as the witch in fairy tales. In fact, this girl was indeed a witch. Jiyuan Temple Yuju. The current manager of Sanyu City was also a famous magician. This witch was slowly walking in her home. She came to the door of the chat room, opened the door, and walked in. Ever since Qin Zi graduated from school and irresponsibly left Sanliang City to Yuzhu. Yuzhu had been living alone ever since he went on a trip on his own. Of course, this manor house had become a demon's den. There were magic traps and powerful enchantments everywhere. It was impossible for anyone to break in without Yuzhu noticing. However, when Yuzhu walked into the chat room, as usual, the room that used to be lifeless was filled with the aroma of tea. Yuzhu was stunned. She raised her head and looked into the room. Then, her eyes, which had been calm all this time, started to ripple. In the room that was supposed to be empty, a person was sitting on the sofa. There was a cup of hot tea on the coffee table in front of him. That person sat there casually and drank the black tea. When he saw Yuzhu walk in, he smiled at her. "You're here." His tone was as if he was greeting his roommate who had just woken up. However, this was not wrong, although it was very short. Yuzhu had to admit that other than Aoi, this man was the only roommate she allowed to enter the manor house that was the most important to her. Shizuka Kusuguru did not have Yoju's permission and was long forgotten. Moreover, this roommate had disappeared for a very long time. Seeing that her roommate who had disappeared for a long time had reappeared, Yoju's eyes rippled, but her expression did not change. Even though she was very surprised, and her emotions were somewhat unstable. As a witch who had never been good at expressing her emotions since young, Yuzhu didn't do anything strange. She simply walked in front of the other party, sat down, and looked straight into the other party's eyes as she spoke indifferently. "When did you come back?" "Just now," Noah replied as he poured tea for Yuzhu. "Aoi went on a trip. You don't feel lonely living here alone, do you?" "No," Yuzhu said matter-of-factly. "This is my original life." "Is it?" Noah looked at Yuzhu and smiled. "Then, why don't you come with Aoi and try another life with me?" Hearing this, Yuzhu was stunned. In the same world, in another parallel world, there were also girls who had a deep relationship with Noah. However, these girls were not in Sanyo City, but in Fuyuki City. Fuyuki City was a remote place in the magic world. However, in the world line of the X-Moon world, the Holy Grail War that happened in this remote place was a very important part, enough to affect the direction of the world. In the last Holy Grail War, which was the 5th Holy Grail War in history, the master and servant who survived to the end personally destroyed the Holy Grail, which ended the history of the Holy Grail War and also ended this fundamentally wrong ritual. However, although the ritual itself was wrong, the result was gratifying. At least, there were 2 servants who got a body that could survive in this world after that and lived an ordinary life that was absolutely impossible when they were alive. At this moment, one of the servants was following a petite girl, walking on a street in Fuyuki City. The petite girl had long snow-like hair that reached her waist. She looked less than 10 years old, but she was as cute as a snow elf, attracting the attention of passers-by. However, the girl kept puffing out her cheeks, and with an angry and dissatisfied look, she kept complaining while walking. "Really, Ling and Sakura are so stingy. What's wrong with letting me go to school with them?" Hearing the cute girl's words, the tall and mature woman beside her shook her head helplessly and said, "Ilya, don't mess around. After all, it's a high school. Even if you want to go, you have to consider your age, right? I'm already 18 years old. It's just that my body has stopped growing," Ilya said loudly. "I'm older than Ling and Sakura. Why don't you let me go to high school? It's boring to stay in the castle alone. Don't you still have me?" Ryder smiled slightly. "Master gave me an order before leaving that I must protect you, so I won't leave you. Ryder is better, not as bad as Ling and Sakura. It's a pity to let Saber be their servant." Ilya hugged Ryder's hand, and her small face was full of a black-bellied expression. "Sure enough, it's better to let Saber become my thing. When you go back, you have to plan and help me, Ryder." Hearing that, Ryder could only smile bitterly, but did not say anything. Evidently, Ilya had done the same thing many times before. Right at that moment, Ryder suddenly stopped and turned her head, looking in a certain direction. Ilya said strangely. "What's wrong?" "This feeling." Ryder pressed one hand on her heart. "The connection of the contract?" "The connection of the contract?" Ilya was startled at first, then opened her eyes wide, somewhat excited. Could it be that that person has returned? Ilya did not get an answer to this question, because in the next second, Ilya saw it. At the intersection in front, a person was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, looking in their direction with a smile on his face. Brother. Ilya excitedly pounced over. Ryder also looked at Noah, and an extremely beautiful smile gradually appeared on her face. Chapter 2200. After recovering in Between Worlds, Noah began to travel to and fro different worlds, meeting his family, friends, and lovers one by one, and enjoying the joy of reunion. For example, in the three worlds of Absolute Dual Blades, Night of the Magicians, and Fate, Noah went back to the worlds of Fairy's Tale and Black Bullet and reported the good news to his companions in the two guilds who were familiar with the details. After catching up with them, he immediately went to those worlds. In the world of Absolute Dual Blades, Noah reunited with Ivanli, Julie, Lilith, Gallia, and Orange Bar. In the world of Night of the Magicians, Noah reunited with Yuju in the mansion, and then set off to find Aoko. In the world of Fate, Noah reunited with Ilya and Medusa, and then found Rin and Osaka, Tosaka, and Altoria, which made the latter both happy and surprised. In addition to the three worlds of Absolute Dual Blades, Night of the Magicians, and Fate, there was also the world of King of the Undead, which Noah hadn't returned to before. Later, he went there and met with Yair Bade and other guardians in the Big Tomb on Ernassarik. Of course, in addition to these worlds that he hadn't returned to before, Noah also returned to those worlds that he had returned to before. For example, in the world of God's Slayer, Noah found Luo Hao in China's Lushan Mountain, Alice in England's high-end residential street, Erica and Liliana in Milan, Italy, and Yuri in Keinan, Tokyo, Japan. For example, in the world of Demon Academy, Noah went directly to the Coal King Academy and found a group of Jimenez's family led by Leah. For example, in the world of Seeking a Chance Encounter in the Underground City, Noah first met with Hestia, and then took Hestia to Loki's family to meet with Aes, which made Hestia and Loki, who were like fire and water, almost fight each other. Another example was the world of the Elf Sword Dance. Noah also found Lotus, Claire, Linley, Fianna, and Alice, who were traveling around the world. In the end, Noah returned to Problem Children Come from Another World and met up with Letitia and Pest. He also met up with Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, and Dazzle in No Name. In short, Noah revisited the various worlds that he had visited before and reunited with his friends and family. However, Noah's goal was not just to reunite. In one world after another, Noah sent out invitations to all the girls who had a deep relationship with him. It was a very special invitation. Between the worlds, after revisiting all the worlds, Noah returned. Whoa! Around him, pieces of feathers fluttered happily, sticking to Noah's side like spoiled children. Noah smiled faintly. After teasing the feathers around him, he lifted his head and looked ahead. He saw that in the originally pure white world, there was actually a magnificent palace that had appeared out of nowhere. At the same time as Noah returned, the gate of the magnificent palace opened immediately. Then, two petite figures walked out from inside. "You're back." Alea looked at Noah. "Welcome back. Welcome back, little Noah." Gaia put her hands on her waist and looked at Noah with some confusion in her eyes. "By the way, why did your eyes change back?" Taking a closer look, Noah's eyes had changed from a pair of red and a pair of gold pupils back to their original black and deep color. "Nothing." Noah shrugged. "I just use a little trick. Otherwise, it would be too eye-catching." After saying that, Noah closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his pitch-black pupils had turned red and gold, and he had returned to his original appearance. "It's still more handsome like this." Gaia smiled and changed the topic. "So, little Noah, have you returned to all the worlds?" "I have." Noah nodded. "Also, I have sent out invitations to all the people I know." "That's good," Alea said softly. "This way, we should have more people on our side." "Let's hope those kids are reliable people," Gaia muttered. "Otherwise, how can I let others collect the world fragments without worry?" Now, in the entire Between the Worlds, other than a few dozen worlds, the rest of the worlds have been destroyed and the fragments were scattered to the other worlds. Now that the biggest disaster in the Between the Worlds had been eliminated, there was no threat. Noah naturally had to find the lost world fragments and put the matter of repairing the worlds on the agenda. However, the number of destroyed worlds was more than tens of millions. No matter how strong Noah was, it was still a problem that he couldn't split himself. If they relied on Noah alone to find all the world fragments, it would probably take a lot of time. For this, Gaia and Aleia both gave a suggestion to Noah. That was to let Noah invite people he trusted and distribute the task to everyone. But will this really work? Noah couldn't help but ask. Can everyone really enter this Between the Worlds? No problem. Aleia answered Noah. The world in your body has been reborn, and you can distribute your power to other people, allowing them to obtain the same characteristics as you. As long as you distribute your power to those you trust, then, before the power is exhausted, these people will be able to enter the Between the Worlds like you, see the world fragments, and retrieve them. Aren't we proof? Gaia turned in a lively circle. If we didn't obtain your power, we wouldn't be able to continue staying here and would have returned to our original world. Hearing this, Noah was relieved. Raising his head and looking around, Noah slowly raised his hand that a wave suddenly reverberated from Noah's hand. The ripple spread out and spread to the entire Between the Worlds. Under this wave of ripples, in every corner of the Between the Worlds, there were pieces of extremely dim light. Only half of the broken feathers floated over and gathered around Noah. Looking at the pieces of broken feathers, Noah was stunned for a long time. Gaia and Aleia also stopped smiling and quietly looked at this scene. Compared to the few dozens of complete feathers, the number of incomplete feathers gathered together was frighteningly large. And each of the broken feathers represented a destroyed world. All that was left of them was this incomplete half that had no power at all. The other half had all been lost to the remaining intact worlds, waiting for the day when they would be restored to their former glory. However, with so many worlds, it was unknown how long it would take to restore all of them. After all, the people that Noah could invite were limited. Of course, this limit was set by Gaia and Aleia. This space between worlds is, after all, a space that accommodates worlds. It doesn't allow other life forms to exist. You can enter and leave this place freely because you are essentially a world. As for us, even if we borrowed your power and obtained the temporary right to move around here, we are still not as good as a world. Therefore, it is best not to have too many people moving in this Between the Worlds. Otherwise, this space may become seriously chaotic. You could just invite a small number of people. It was because of this that Noah only invited the girls that he was familiar with. Although the number of people is limited, it is still faster than me going alone. Noah softly muttered, "One day, I will definitely restore all of you and let you freely soar in this Between the Worlds." It was unknown if it was because they heard Noah's promise, but the pieces of broken feathers slightly trembled. Only then did Noah smile, and with a wave of his hand, the thousands of incomplete worlds retreated. The heavy atmosphere in the air also faded away. At this moment, Gaia's expression suddenly became crafty. Her tone was like she was asking a question that she already knew the answer to. She looked at Noah and said, "Speaking of which, little Noah, the people that you invited were all girls. There wasn't a single man, right?" These words made Noah's eyes twitch. He turned his head and looked at Gaia with resentment. Gaia laughed at this, while Aleia sighed. Under such circumstances, Noah subconsciously looked at the majestic palace in front of him. That palace was a stronghold that Gaia and Aleia had created. Naturally, Noah and the girls that were invited would all live here. However, above the entrance of this majestic palace, there were two big words: harem. Without a doubt, this was done by Gaia. Moreover, she was determined not to let Noah change it. With such a palace name, she still wanted Noah to invite men. Although, if he invited women, whether or not they were willing to live in it was also a problem, it could be imagined that the future life would be so exciting that Noah would be exhausted. Thus, Noah could not help but sigh. Anyway, let Mira and Lysina come and take a look first. Otherwise, Noah would not dare to let a group of girls live in it. End of book. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.